Hello, my name is Adam Adcock, and I wanted to share with people, whoever's watching, a little bit of an exploration that I'm trying today. It's an experiment, and I just wanted to start by describing to you my beginning point, and hopefully you can see this form well. What I have here is just me playing one day. I'm not really aiming for anything in particular, but I've been interested in these flowing sort of fabric-like forms for a while that I can get patterns integrated into, and but yet they're see-through. So I've been after this lightweight, see-through, flowy kind of pattern, and it hit me one day that maybe I could get there by using string and sort of stiffening the string. So this form in particular, this is the only one I've done like this, was created by draping fabric over a form to create this kind of cradle shape. And then I put some wax paper down, hoping that that would keep the glue from sticking. So I laid wax paper down, and then I just took cotton, just regular cotton string. It was kind of a thick string like twine, and I was dipping it in a bath of wood glue, and then basically just pulling it out of the glue and kind of wiping the excess glue off, and just draping it onto the form and trying to control my line work to achieve a pattern. And in particular, I was thinking about like our thumbprints or our fingerprints when I was doing this one. So it's this kind of spiraling pattern, and in order to create, structure and rigidity, I ended up having to come back with secondary lines to create this network or this grid system so that it would support itself and not fall apart. So what I have is a fairly firm form that is nothing but glue and string. But what I want to do today, and I have no idea if this will work because I've never done this before, but I'm trying. If you look closely, there's some sections where the glue kind of filled in the voids, and I'm interested in trying to replicate that elsewhere in this form. And so I was thinking that maybe if I could get paper fiber to sort of envelop in these voids, then I could get this sort of web, very thin transparency between the forms. So that's basically what I'm going to try. I've seen people use this material called overbeaten flax. It's just a type of fiber that can be used in paper making, that my understanding is it is a long paper fiber, and it does a really good job of catching between long spans or large spans. And so I'm going to suspend some of that into this bath here, and then just dip this form in, and then I'll be hanging it and letting it dry, and then re-dipping, and just doing that over and over again until I hopefully build up a skin that webs in between these voids. So we'll see how it goes. If it's a failure, you'll at least get to watch a failure. So I'm going to start out by suspending some of this pulp. This is the flax pulp that a friend of mine that I work with, Andrea Vale, in the fibers department or program at ASU, she basically beat this fiber for me. Well, she did it for a demonstration for her students in class. But you can see it's really long, thin fibers. She did this for a demonstration in her class with her students, and then had leftover, and I asked her if I could use it and experiment with it. So I did not do the beating process of this, but from what I understand, I think you boil the fibers, the flax fibers, for a while first, and then you put it into a paper beater, and I think it beats for like 8 to 12 hours. So that's why they call it overbeaten flax. It's beaten for a really long time to give it this really, really thin, long, stringy makeup. So I'm just going to put this into the water and break it up by hand to try and disperse it evenly throughout the water. And I'm really just guesstimating on how much fiber to add to the water. I'm going to just visually inspect it and dip my hands in it and see what I think would be a good amount. If you're curious where you can get your hands on some of this type of pulp, I suggest going to carriagehousepaper.com. It's one of the central locations online to pick up anything to do with paper making. And I recommend just typing flax into their search bar here. And you'll see that there's these various types of flax available. And, ooh, I've never looked at sculptural flax. I gotta check that out. But this right here is the product that we started with here at ASU. It's $16.50 per pound, which is very affordable, but it has not been beaten yet. And so if you wanted to buy the same type of pulp that I'm using that's already been beaten for, this says 8 hours, it's getting pretty pricey. So just keep that in mind. If you have a paper beater, access to a paper beater of some sort, just buy this and beat it yourself. If you don't have a paper beater, you may want to go in with someone else and maybe split it. This would last for a long time. This is a lot of pulp, but it's a minimum $150 there. Some other thing I was thinking about, and I haven't experimented with it much, but an alternative that you could consider is called kozo. And I know that kozo is a very common fiber that's used for sculptural processes. And let me look here. Let's just do kozo pulp. The nice thing about kozo is you don't have to have a professional style beater to beat it. And you can see it's only $22 a pound, and it's already been cooked and bleached, so it's like ready to start beating. If you watch YouTube videos, you'll see it's really simple. All you need is like a 2x4 or a paddle, a wooden paddle, and you can beat this pulp on a tabletop just by like turning it and beating until it smashes it. It's sort of like bread dough. You smash it in one direction and then you kind of fold it over and flip it and smash it in the other direction. And you just keep beating it by hand until it turns into really fine fibers that can then be suspended in water. So I just wanted to show you those two options if you are looking to get some of this for yourself. I know I don't want any clumps in it, so getting all these clumps out is probably not going to be very easy, but I will patiently work on breaking up the clumps. Now, one thing that I'm hoping for with this paddle is it's not sharp. It doesn't have sharp edges, and so I specifically was looking for something not sharp, because remember, I don't want to cut, as much as I can help it, I don't want to cut those fibers, because I'm hoping that the fibers will be long. And so I'm hoping that this more or less just kind of disperses but avoids cutting the fibers. What's really great about this flax fiber is this was beaten, I believe, approximately 6 months ago. And so Andrea put the excess fiber that she had from her students into the freezer and froze it, and I would say for several months, and then I pulled it out of the freezer and put it in the refrigerator at least 2 months ago. This is pandemic time, so all time has kind of merged into a, you know, an abyss of confusion. But I think about 2 months ago I pulled it out of the freezer and put it in the refrigerator, and I forgot about it. And it is, I checked on it last week and pulled it out, and there was no mold at all, which I was kind of shocked. I expected it to be moldy. But anyway, what's cool about this is this fiber can last for a long time if you just reclaim it. I plan on straining this when I'm finished, straining it, getting all the water back out of it, and putting it back in the refrigerator and reusing it again in the future, or possibly freezing it again. Well, so far I've only used my hand up to this point, and I'm still not very happy with the larger clumps. I would like to get it all to the sort of cloudy, milky look. So I decided I would try this whisk and see if it would break those fibers up. We have a little handheld blender that I considered using, but the important factor here is that you don't want to cut those fibers. You want the fibers to remain long and skinny. So we don't want to risk chopping them in any way. I think this is making a difference. My wife might not be very happy about this, but it was available. Okay, so that was my first attempt at dipping, and you can hopefully kind of see the effects that I got here. You can see it really well there where the light is shining through the window. I'm sorry this is such poor quality, very little planning ahead of time and in my dirty basement. But this is my making space, so it is what it is. And I just used a little lamp, a taped lamp, clamp-on lamp, and wrapped a wire around it for hanging, but it's working. So we'll come back later and see what it's looking like after it dries. Okay, so it's day 2. And I just wanted to give you an update on where we're at now. You can see that I've got the form laying in this weird cardboard box on an ironing board. What happened was yesterday, while I left it drying over there on my little makeshift hanger, it was hanging vertically, right, like this orientation. And so all the water was draining down to this tip, and the bottom tip stayed soggy for quite some while. I left it hanging for about 8 hours, and the bottom became so soggy and wet that the wood glue that I had stiffened the string up with basically lost its stiffness, and it became really, the whole thing was kind of floppy and lost its form. So I made this makeshift cradle, and I shoved some various fabrics to kind of support it and allow it to continue drying out, holding its form. And it seems to have done a pretty good job. It's maintained the kind of bowl shape that I had originally. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to dip it again, and what I think might solve my problem is I'm going to attempt to use polyacrylic as a waterproofing agent, and I'm planning on basically painting some polyacrylic over the entire form, front and back, and I'll let the polyacrylic completely dry, and once that coat is dry, then I'm going to go for another dip. So I will catch you then. Okay, so the polyacrylic that I painted on seems to be pretty dry, and I'm ready to try dipping my second time. I'm just going to stir these fibers and get them suspended evenly. And this time I'm going to try and do a little bit more of just a straight dip in instead of a scooping dip, and see what happens. Yeah, that looks a lot better. I'll bring the camera in closer, or the object in closer. If you can see, there's a much finer degree of filling in those voids, so it's much more it's just thinner and more delicate, especially you can see up in this region. So that's more what I'm after. So I think thinning out my amount of pulp has made a big difference. I don't know if you can see that side or not, but it's looking a lot more like a really thin webbing. I'm pretty happy with that. I think 1 or 2 more dips is all I'm going to want. Okay, so I'm going to hang it back up here and let it dry again. And I have a dehumidifier running down here in my basement, so I think that's helping dry it out. In fact, I'm going to push the dehumidifier up here closer and let it blow more directly on this as it's drying. So we'll pick back up. So this is day 3, and as you can tell, The form has held its shape pretty well this time. So I think that coating of polyacrylic did make a difference. And I've got a pretty stiff, I think it's stiffer now than it was before I started putting paper on there, so that's nice. And I'm pretty happy with the results that I have at this point. I think I'm going to go for one more dip and call it done after that. I think I'd like to see just a few more of those cells closed up, but I'm really happy with the see-through nature of many of these cells. So this is going to be my last dip, so I figured you all could watch this final dip. I'm going to fluff up my fibers, and I'm just leaving, I've just left everything the same from the last dip. I'm just leaving this out open air, so it's really simple to manage. And here we go. I am kind of shaking it around a little bit as I dip in there to try and catch some of the fibers that come up through the holes. Yeah, I think I'm gonna like that as a final dip. I can already see how it's filled in some of those gaps. And now for this side. I went back in there because I was hoping to catch a little bit more in these larger holes, but I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to try and catch just a little bit more there in that section. Yeah, that's perfect. So I wanted to catch a little bit more in this section, and that seems to have worked. I think I'm going to flip it around and see if I can't catch just a little bit more in this section right here, just like I did there. I may be pushing my luck here, but here goes. I think I'm going to flip it and hang it from this direction this time and let the water ooze down to the opposite side this time. I just wanted to show everybody the final result. This is where I'm stopping. I'm pretty happy with the amount of coverage and the look of it and the ratio of open holes to closed holes. So I don't know if you can see that well or not, but that kind of gives you an idea of the color of the paper pulp once it's dry, and the stiffness. Still a little bit flexible, but it is stiffer than it was to begin with. It's holding its form really well. This is the back side. The front side is definitely nicer looking, I think, than the back. And next I'm planning on adding some color. I think I'll paint a little bit on this, and then I will hopefully follow up with I'm going to be joining this with a ceramic piece that's sort of a backer to it. So hopefully I'll be able to kind of follow up this video with a shot of what they look like together. This is the finished sculpture mounted to a display wall. This is an assemblage of the paper lattice structure glued to a ceramic backing plate. The form mounted in the center is a painted 3D print, meant to reference a smooth river stone. I think I'm going to title this Skin and Stone. Thanks for watching this process. I've really been pleased with the outcome of using paper fiber in this way, and I plan to experiment more with this on other types of forms in the future. If you're interested, maybe you'll give this a try also.